if you struggle to find staff, you literally only service your client in terms of low-hanging fruit. I've got these accounts, they're easy to collect on, they're the easiest to access. And the stuff that becomes a bit more difficult, you leave purely because you don't have the staff to churn through all these accounts.
Hey everyone, it's Ashley with Arbeit. We are back with another episode of Arbeit U. And today we have a first time guest on our show, and we have Louis, the co founder of Resolv Global. And today we're going to be talking about how to choose the right nearshore partner. I'm really excited to talk about this topic because I feel like it's getting very more prevalent in our industry now. So I'm really excited to hear from Louis. So I'm going to bring him in. And if you could, Louis, just tell us a little bit about you and your company for people who may not know you or have heard of your company.
Good morning, Ashley. Thank you for the invite. It's nice to be on the show. Appreciate it. Yes, my name is Louis Siebritz. You'll hear from my accent, I'm South African, but I've been here in Dallas, Texas for the last 5 years. And my partner, Jason Buzak, is up in your alley. He's in Buffalo. We've been partners for a couple of years now. And our company, Resolv Global, does a nearshore and offshoring of any type of collection service or customer service. We have got offices in South Africa, recently acquired an office in Kenya, and we also have offices in Colombia. So we are able to then support nearshore, offshore, and at the moment, English and Spanish requirements.
Cool. I know we actually had met like a year ago, I think at ACA International. And when you were explaining it, I was like, this is really cool. And like now it's definitely more prevalent. So I'm really excited just to hear your take on all of the questions that I have for you. So I definitely want to just jump right into it. And what would you say are some of the key factors to considering to consider when selecting a nearshore or offshore partner? Just like, where do you go to find like remote teams, recruiters, or any like red or green flags that you would look for?
Perfect. Thanks. I think, there's definitely BPO companies like ourselves. They are in abundance. There's a lot of us out there. It's a highly competitive industry. Obviously, if I'm a lender or a collections agency or a customer service agency, I am going to determine, first of all, what's my needs and requirements. Is it going to be bilingual? Is it going to be the hours of operation? Am I allowed to offshore? Sometimes there's restrictions from their clients, certain banks or insurance would not want to offshore. And so selecting your partner, I think the biggest part of any selection process is that you have to consider that whatever you do offshore has to be seen as an extension of your own company. It's not that I've got 10 agents sitting in Durban or Cape Town and Johannesburg or in Medellin in Colombia, and they're out of sight, out of mind. I think your biggest thing that you have to consider is to make sure that you understand that those agents are part of your organization. They should be treated the same way as if they were internal, and they should be treated the same way that you would have treat your normal remote agents. I think that's part of the process. The biggest thing is it's a strategic decision to grow. I'll just expand a bit. Actually, I'll run ahead a bit, but I think important about this is that to train agents, whether it's in the US or offshore, takes probably 90 days, 3 months for them to be on par with what typical expectations is. The difference is in the US, the tenure is 10 to 12 months and then people change jobs. So then that process starts again. Whereas if you offshore, most of those countries have extremely high unemployment rates. Again, if I refer to South Africa, it's a 40% unemployment rate. So the tenure becomes 5, 6, 7 years. And so we call it impact sourcing. So when you I think if you talk about finding partners, find partners that take impact sourcing seriously. Don't do sweatshops. Don't pay minimum wages. Try and find the partners that actually look after those agents as part of your human capital.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was at a conference a couple weeks ago and I was talking to someone who does something similar. And she was telling me that they do like pizza parties and just like whole family parties with their agents. And it sounded really nice. And it sounded like that's something that they loved. I love that answer.
And
That's
it's
awesome.
exactly, I don't see this work. If you just regard them as bums in seats, it's going to work. You literally have to treat them as staff. And we do exactly the same. We brand office areas, office space that represents the client. We've put some software in that allows for real time interaction between the US management and the agents. That's offshore. They do some gamification, they do some online interactions, and we arrange for stuff like barbecues, fun events for the staff in the call centers, and our clients get involved in that directly.
Awesome. And I know some people are like, they don't know if they should use nearshore or offshore partnerships. So, is there any indicators that, what are some indicators that would suggest a business should start considering using nearshore or offshore?
Obviously, there's a big cost benefit to offshoring or nearshoring. I think at the moment the costing is very similar. It's not a huge difference between offshoring and nearshoring. So some of the benefits of nearshoring is obviously it's mostly the same time zones, and it's easy to get on a flight and fly 3 or 4 hours and go and have a visit. Whereas if you go to South Africa or the Philippines or India or Kenya, it's a bit more of a travel. But
Mhm.
I think again, it all depends on what you want to achieve. And I think sometimes that the real offshoring does provide longevity in these arrangements. I think the nearshoring has got a bit higher attrition rates, a bit more of a churn. It's much more competitive for resources, whereas offshoring does allow you to build teams over longer periods.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. And you just touched on this next question as far as costs go. So my next question is, how does integrating a nearshore or offshore team impact the overall operational cost for a company? So I know you said it's a little bit cheaper as in regards to the agents. Is there any other like costs that they would be saving by doing something like this?
So I think and let's talk about an agency, for instance, or a lender, a lot of the costs for them are already sunken costs. They already have a dialer, they already have a CMS, or they already have their own management tools. So
Mhm.
these agents are just additional licenses in the same way that it would have been for them to bring onshore agents into their environment. So I think a lot of the cost is already sunken for them. Again, but it's the reverse that applies for our offshoring agents. Again, going back to South Africa, it's a night shift. So people get into the office at the end of the day and they work till midnight. In our South African call centers, it's literally just hot seating. Somebody leaves the day shift where they did the domestic South African collections, and at night they switch over to becoming US collectors. So there's a lot of sunken cost there already as well.
Mhm.
But for me, offshoring should not just be about cost. It should be about the fact that you actually build human capital. If somebody stays with you for 3, 4, 5 years and that they understand your product better, they adjust to your company culture better, they can grow actually into your organization. You create the same career paths for them to become team leaders and managers managing your offshore staff. So you create a lot more opportunities than just being an agent. Our terminology is the bum in the seat, but I think it should just not be about cost. It should be about the impact that you make with offshoring as well and growing teams and in the end, your profitability. If I think about the life of a collections agency, if you struggle to find staff, you literally only service your client in terms of low hanging fruit. I've got these accounts, they're easy to collect on, they're the easiest to access. And the stuff that becomes a bit more difficult, you leave purely because you don't have the staff to churn through all these accounts. Whereas if you've got resources, a larger team, literally at probably about 40 to 50% of the cost of a UH agent, you don't only service yourself better, but you service your customers better. And I think that's part of the whole idea over and above just a cost saving on a bumper sheet.
Yeah, got it. And this kind of ties into just like everything, I guess, that we've already been talking about. But and I hear you bringing it in here and there throughout these questions. But how do like differences in the time zones and the language and the culture, how does that impact the decision to go nearshore or offshore? And just to add on to that question, have you had any responses from consumers, like how they react to maybe speaking with a nearshore or offshore agent?
Yeah, again, I think whether you go offshore or nearshore, they work the US time zones. So
Hmm.
you decide whether you require the agents to work Eastern time, Mountain time, Pacific, whatever, Central time. You make those decisions. So the agents adapt to US working hours.
Hmm.
So I think that doesn't have a big difference in terms of sometimes we get some pushback in terms of but what about the accent? And so again, so if you go to places like South Africa, Kenya, they former British colonies. So English is the first language. The universities, the schools, business is conducted in English. So it's literally not a big crisis. And
Hmm.
then I think sometimes I think accents a bit overplayed. I think we as US consumers are 100% used to a call center agent having some kind of an accent, whether it's a bit of a South American or an Asian or let's call it an African accent. I think we've become accustomed to it. I think it's the exception where people really push back on those accents. But then we do a lot of work in terms of culturalization. There's a lot of tools out there that does a bit of modulation of accents. We do a lot of training in terms of US culture. If somebody phones you in Arizona or in New York, they know what's the topics of the day. We teach them those things. So it's a
Yeah.
lot of, and they become used to it. There's TVs in the offices with football, except when the Cowboys play, then we switch it off. They understand the news, and they live in we always say they become actors. They learn, they adapt to the customers, and they learn to talk a bit like we are used to.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I remember actually when we first met, that was like one of the biggest things you were saying about the language, quote unquote, barrier, where you guys really don't have that issue. And I think that's amazing and that's great. And I think a lot of people maybe don't realize that. They don't
Yep,
realize that their first language is English and that's what they're
exactly.
gonna sound like. So yeah, that's awesome.
That's true. So it makes a big difference. And as I say, there's so much tools in terms of the training of agents uh, to let's call that Americanize them. And it's become a big business. I think the BPO industry in South Africa has got so much funding and support from the South African government. It's a huge job creation tool. It grows substantially. In Kenya, it's growing substantially. It's literally, people have seen, typically service the UK market because of the time zone. But now they're growing, the US market is growing rapidly to being serviced from Africa.
Good to know. I know we just talked about like the company culture just geographically, which I think is like so cool. Like they watch football and all that stuff. So that's awesome. And we talked about retaining the employees and reducing turnover, and that all makes sense. But as you mentioned, like the time zone thing where maybe being here in the US, their day is over, right? But maybe their nearshore or offshore agents are just starting. So do you have some best practices for managing teams like this? Like, how are you seeing your clients manage their nearshore or offshore
So I
team?
think there's two parts to it. The one is, I think it's only successful if you through proper communication. So two things that I think that I call the secret sauce of offshoring and nearshoring is
Mhm.
communication and setting clear goals. I just need to know exactly what is expected from them, whether it's in a dollar value or a number of calls or of handling a number of incoming calls. Those has to be clear.
Yep.
And then communicating your company culture to the agents to make them feel part of the team. So again, just to be clear, if their day is exactly our day in
Oh, that's
terms of
right. That's right.
operating
Yep.
hours. So, but we do a lot of other things. So we've just recently acquired software. If I can mention it, the collaboration room AI. I
Yeah.
mean, great. It allows our clients to literally see our agents real time. It allows them to ask questions real time, whether it's by video, by texting, by chatting. It allows them to participate in those client functions. So they literally become integral part of the client's office. And I think you can't do away without those tools to remove the barriers of being remote. And I think that helps a lot. But it takes a lot of commitment from to actually bring these people into the fold and making them part of the team. It's literally, it requires work from both sides.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, collaboration room AI is definitely a cool tool to have, and
Exactly.
I can see that playing a great role in something like this.
And then we have agreements with some software vendors, with Sammy at Esconnect. We've got an agreement with Beam.
Yep,
We've got an agreement with Interpros, and they've been extremely helpful in training our trainers. So
yeah.
we have on-site trainers that understand all these different software packages extremely well. And that helps a lot. So by the time an agent is provided to some of our clients, they're software trained, they're FTCPA trained, and all that's required and that's left is then training them on your unique scripts, your unique and your company culture and your objectives.
Yeah, that's awesome, and that was the last question is what role does technology play in facilitating effective training and development for remote teams? And it reminded me, this is not the question, but it reminded me of maybe just touching on this topic because another thing that I can see people maybe not knowing or not being aware of is when they do get these agents from you, they're using all of the agency software, right? So they're learning, they don't have to use a different collection software or a different dialer or a different phone system. They're being trained on what they already have.
It's exactly. And so they literally, I want to say they're in-house to a large extent. Maybe they sit remotely, but they on your payment processor, your dialer, everything is on your system. So you've got complete control. And that helps a lot in terms of data security. So we
Yep.
can do a lot of data in terms of data security, making sure it's a clean desk. We've got controlled access to the laptop, to the call centers, all that type of stuff. And that's also why we use collaboration room AI as part of our security measure. But they live in your world from a tech standpoint, and so from a tech point of view, and then from a human point of view, they live in your world, and that's why it's so important to make them part of the team.
Yeah. Awesome. Before we wrap this up, I realize I missed a part of a question I want to ask you because I think this is an important question. Is just are you seeing people do like full remote teams or do they have their nearshore or offshore agents and then they also have local employees? What are you seeing as like the major or I guess more prevalent?
So we have the whole spectrum. We have agencies that are fully remote now, fully offshore.
Mm.
We have agencies that use remote agents maybe just as point callers, but then would transfer those clients back to their closers at their local offices. And we have people that use champion challenger strategies. They will say, give me agents in Kenya, give me agents in South Africa, or give me agents in Colombia. And our teams compete with each other as well for work. And they would compare that to the domestic agent and domestic performance. I think I like the hybrid idea. It keeps everybody honest in terms of performance. And you can literally move roles offshore and onshore and three. I think that's it. I think it's literally about personal objectives and choices and how comfortable you feel with one job being offshore or nearshore.
That's cool. They have a bunch of different options. It doesn't have to be like a in a box. This is what you
No,
have to do.
yeah. I think that's also why we promote ourselves as a boutique solution. We're not off the shelf. It's
Mhm.
not a one solution fits everybody, and we work with that. I think the last thing then, what makes us different? You've got a really strong US team here. Myself, Jason, we've got some other people up in Buffalo working for us, making sure that we transfer people. I call them translators. They translate the American needs to the call centers outside of the US. And then we have obviously no minimum FTEs, no minimum term requirements. And I think that makes us different to a large extent, our ability to be unique in the way that we try and service our customer base.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that you have people in Buffalo. It's
Yeah,
very cool.
I mean, I suffer in football season, but
Don't we all from Buffalo? My camera's blurred out. You can't see, but I have a huge Josh Allen picture right behind me.
Oh, okay. Well, that's in every house in Buffalo, Ashley.
Awesome. This has been so great. I want to give you just an opportunity to give your final thoughts, maybe just some feedback, or maybe what if people don't currently use nearshore or offshore agents, maybe why they should, and where people can find you, because maybe someone's going to watch this and say, I need offshore agents right now and want to reach out to you. So if you can just clear that up, that'd be great.
Perfect. So I'll give you our website. It's just https resolve without an e dot global, and then I'm at Louis at resolve dot global, and or Jason at resolve dot global. We are on our LinkedIn profile as well. I think that we're happy to talk to people. It won't be, it doesn't have to be a sales call. If you just want to talk to us about offshoring, you want to talk to us where on earth South Africa is. Some people don't even know where that is. We're happy to just talk. We're happy to share our knowledge. We're happy to share our experiences. And yeah, and I think I forgot to mention that we do have Resolve Impact. That's our social responsibility leg. So apart from between Jason and myself, we've committed a percentage of every dollar that we earn goes to social responsibility, and we currently support foster care families out in Cape Town, South Africa. And that's who we are. We're there to make a difference, whether the difference is helping a business or whether it is helping somebody having a meal on the table. That's our makeup. That's what we do.
Aw, I love that. Wow, you guys are great. This episode has been great. I can't wait to share this on LinkedIn and have everyone watch it and everyone reach out to you guys. But thank you again, Louis, for joining us. It was awesome to learn more about this and learn more about you. So thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, Ashley. Stay safe and stay warm.
Thanks so
Bye.
much, Louis.